Rick Bowness calls it a career as the Jets are now on the hunt for a new head coach. Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of Jet Setting. Rob Wong joined alongside by Winnipeg Sun sports editor Ted Wyman. And Ted, after coaching 38 seasons in the NHL, the last two of them with the Jets, Rick Bowness has decided to retire. His first job, of course, was in Winnipeg, and his last was in Winnipeg as well. It was only 2 seasons and a bit for Bowness with the Jets, but how do you think he will be remembered in this city?
Well, I think he'll be remembered in this city the same way that he's going to be remembered around the NHL, and that is one of the very best people in the game of hockey, a class act, a person that is everyone's friend in this game, highly respected, and just a great hockey man who put aside retirement for a couple of years. He had already planned to retire 2 years ago, to come in and take on the challenge of turning a very dysfunctional Winnipeg Jets team into something that could potentially have success and go after a Stanley Cup. And they're going to remember the fact that he led this team to 2 very good regular seasons, particularly this year. At times in each of those regular seasons, the Jets were in first place overall in the NHL. They didn't finish it off. In his first season, they collapsed during the regular season and then righted the ship and collapsed again in the playoffs. And this year, they just had so much potential. 4th overall in the NHL. They should have been, a real contender to go far in the playoffs, and they just weren't. They were unable to get there, and Rick certainly put some of that on his own shoulders. So here's, I think that's the legacy that he leaves. Is a guy who really turned around that team and gave them a chance, made them a playoff team and gave them a chance, but couldn't bring it home. So there's 2 different angles that you're going to remember. One, the great hockey man who has a great affinity for Winnipeg and did a great job in turning it around, and also as the guy who wasn't able to get them to perform in the playoffs.
So now the Jets must look for his replacement. There are and could be even more intriguing names on the market, depending on how things play out in other markets, or maybe there's some internal options that you're looking at, Ted. But as it stands right now, are there any names that jump out to you?
Yeah, so I always believed that when they hired both Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel a couple of years ago, that they had a succession plan and that it was going to be Rick Bowness for as long as he wanted to go until retirement. And then Scott Arniel was going to take over. And, Scott's done a fine job as the assistant coach of the Jets, or associate coach of the Jets, I should say. And he really was behind the bench quite often, to be honest, doing head coaching duties, because Rick Bowness wasn't available during his first season because he had COVID. He ended up with some sort of long COVID, issues that he was dealing with. And then this past season, his wife, Judy, suffered a seizure, and he was away, tending to her for quite some time. And Scott Arniel was behind the bench again. I don't have the number in front of me how many games Scott Arniel ended up being the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets for, but they were pretty successful in those games. They played really good hockey under him. And I think he is the logical choice because he's just, I think that's part of a succession plan. And I think that he also can continue to work with this system that has made the Jets a very good regular season hockey team. Now, they got to figure out some way to take it further in the playoffs. But with the pieces they have in place here, things don't need, there might be some changes, a few trades here and there, but there's going to be most of the pieces in place for this team to continue to be a good contender for the playoffs. And I think with the system that they've instituted and possibly continue with, they can do quite well. So that would be my front runner for sure. And I think we'll know that sooner or later. I think, sooner than later. If they make an announcement on Scott Arniel, it's probably going to be pretty quick. Get that out of the way, let everybody know that's what it is. There's no search. And if it takes longer, then, there is a search going on, and they are looking at some of the outside names. And of course, a lot of people already clamoring for a coach like Craig Berube, who's available, who's won a Stanley Cup, and obviously would be an excellent choice to come in here. And he's kind of a hard-fisted guy. He was on the ice and he is as a coach. And I think, maybe some people think that that's the kind of guy the Jets need. Todd McClellan's out there still available. Dean Evison, who's from Manitoba, is another guy that's available. He was with Minnesota previously, and maybe those are guys that they might look at. We don't know what's going to happen with Rod Brindamore. He hasn't re-signed in Carolina. And I mean, I don't know, man. I think that would be a stretch to suggest that he's going to be leaving a Carolina team that could win the Stanley Cup this year to come up to Winnipeg, where he has no connections whatsoever. But if we wait longer and longer, then the indication is going to be that they're waiting on a certain person, or they're looking deep into a search and trying to get things going. If we hear next week, it's going to be Scott Arniel, and that would not surprise me. I don't think a ton of the fans, and I think there's a large faction of fans in Winnipeg that don't want to see that. They feel sometimes like it's too much in-house connections. Scott Arniel was drafted by the Winnipeg Jets, played for the original Winnipeg Jets, came back and played for the Manitoba Moose when they were in the International Hockey League. Got his coaching start here. There's a lot of things about him that connect him to the True North organization. And some people tend to think that's kind of just a lateral move if you're doing that, or an in-house loyalty type move. But my gut is that he did really well as the associate coach and in filling in for Rick Bowness. And I just think that he might be the best guy to carry forward what they've already done. And he's been a head coach in the NHL before with Columbus, not a particularly successful run, but that's not the first time we've seen guys have their first run not be successful and become great coaches after.
Yeah, and as you said, this is a team that has a lot of good pieces and is coming off a good season, so they're already starting with a pretty good base, but it seems like they'll have some options if they do want to head down that route. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Let us know who you want to be the next head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. For Ted Wyman, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.